Hi there, welcome to another Rage's Ramblings. And today I have a special guest with me. I have my wife, Christina. So this is her first time on YouTube. And she's a little nervous. Don't worry. It's okay. You'll survive. So, and today I brought her on because we're going to talk about the death of the CD format. So, I love CDs. I have a big collection of CDs here, but as I said in one of my previous videos, I no longer buy CDs. It's changed. And I was a diehard person for many years where I would buy CDs.
Wasting our money on records.
And Christina would see this often, that I would buy CDs 1 or 2 a month for a long time, right?
Yes, and I kept saying, you're wasting too much money on your CDs, because I was the first one to adopt streaming music.
Exactly. And I took me a long time to buy into streaming. And now that I last summer bought an actual YouTube music subscription, that I no longer buy CDs. And it's completely changed my view of things, because for a long time I fought it. I wanted to keep buying CDs and support the artist in that way, but in the reality, you don't really support the artist. You support the music record labels more than anything. The artists don't get paid anything. That's another episode that I will get to at another date. So anyway, so first of all, another reason why I wanted to bring Christina on camera today with us is that although we have very different musical tastes, you know, I like my blues, my rock, my metal, we can only agree on a few rock bands, and she likes like Justin Timberlake. And what's the other artist that you prefer?
Well, I mean, yes, I do love JT, but I have an eclectic amount of interests. I will be honest, though, I'm really stuck in like the 80s, 90s, like the songs that impacted me in my younger days. I don't really listen to a lot of new music per se.
Same with me.
I want so bad to go back when things were good.
Right.
This is what happens when you turn 40.
Yeah, we grew up in a time that was much different, where when you wanted to find a new artist, you watched Much Music. Here in Canada, in the States, you would watch MTV, and that's how you would discover new music, right? Or
well, for me, listening to shout out to Calgary, AM 106 was a radio station in Calgary that I grew up listening to. And I would listen to like the top 6 at 6, the top 10 at 10, and I would have a tape, like a cassette, and I would wait to hear my favorite songs and hit record so that I could listen to it again, because I was young and I didn't want to buy the whole album. I just wanted it like a certain song to listen to, right?
But that's how you discovered artists, right?
Yeah.
The radio, that's
Yeah.
another one, right?
There was no YouTube.
Nope.
I will mention, though, Much Music was a huge component of my childhood, and listening to like Friday nights, I remember it was watching the top 20 songs? I can't even remember.
Something.
The Much Music Countdown.
Yeah.
That is what it was called. And you would just watch the videos. And the 90s videos were so amazing. They were stories. Like I still remember like Meatloaf's song "I Would Do Anything for Love." Like that was huge in the early 90s, and it was a whole
Bryan Adams
theatrical performance.
Yeah, remember Bryan Adams at "Everything I Do for You" song?
That
And
song,
was a big hit.
That was big
I
when the
remember.
Robin Hood movie came out.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, it was a different time, and I don't know. I guess I'm nostalgic for that piece of things.
Yeah. So, and then getting to the CD format. Do you remember your first CD?
I do. Well, I remember getting my first boom box. I was in grade 5 or grade 6, because I started to discover music probably in elementary school. And it had one of those, like, you push the top and the CD, you know what I mean? It was one of those. Anyways,
Oh, yeah.
My first CD was CNC Music Factory. Gonna Make You Sweat. And I don't know how long I had it for. However, I did trade that CD for another CD because my brother's friend wanted CNC Music Factory, and he gave us Metallica, the Black Album. I feel like that was a good trade.
I think it's a good trade, right? So that was your first CD. My first CD, and this is a story because my first electric guitar was a red BC Rich Rave 2 guitar. After I'd gotten another guitar, which was my Ibanez, I traded that BC Rich guitar for my first CD player. Now, before that, I had cassettes and I had like a little boombox, but I didn't have a CD player, and I really wanted a CD player. So I traded it for a CD player, believe it or not, back in the day, a guitar for a CD player. just a single one.
A guitar for a CD player. Wow.
And I went out and my first CD that I bought, surprise, surprise, Pantera's Far Beyond Driven. So that would have been...
I don't know that album at all.
No, she doesn't like Pantera. She's on it. She doesn't like metal. So, but 1994, when this album came out, is when I got my first CD player. And I remember I had to hook it up to our home stereo system that we had at the time. And we had like the double cassette deck and whatnot. But I remember having to hook it up and having to be able to play that finally and having the CD format. And then since then, it's been buying lots and lots of CDs.
Can I borrow that for a second?
Yeah.
So when it comes to CDs as well, there's a whole thing about, opening the CD, actually see, this is falling apart on me. Actually, pushing the middle part, pulling it out, blowing on it. Holding, I don't know. I blew on my CDs if there was dust on them. Yeah. It was a whole experience that you don't get anymore. No. Even with cassettes, I mean, if we want to date cassettes, you'd have to sometimes spin them a little bit because they would come out and get stuck. But
yeah, to re-roll them or whatnot.
But yeah, CDs were...
But you actually owned something. You actually had something in your hand that was tangible that, you could trade it, sell it, do something in the future. But yeah, you used to open it up, look at all the artists' information, song lyrics.
Oh yeah, you'd read read the lyrics right? while you were listening to the songs for the first time. Another thing as well with buying CDs is actually the experience of going and purchasing the CD. Mm-hmm. So, for example, HMV, I still remember going to the malls and walking around and, scouring the sections, the different types of music. And there were these like little streaming sections set up where you would put on headphones and find the CD that you wanted to listen to so you could preview the songs before you actually purchased the CD, because I don't know if you remember, CDs
that was
were
the only way to preview anything. That was the only way to really preview, unless you heard one song or two songs on the radio.
But yeah, you really couldn't preview
at all. An album or whatnot.
No, and CDs also were I feel like $20. Do you remember
when
how
they
much
first
cost?
came out? They were like $15 to $20. Yeah,
which was it was a lot of money, and. You really had to. You would usually buy the CD because there was one or two songs you really liked, and then you'd hope that the rest of the songs were as good.
yeah, and they weren't always. So I think nowadays that the artists have to make more of an album that the whole album would have to just be solid. Mm-hmm. You couldn't have any was it all killer, no filler? Wasn't that Sum 41 came out with an album that title? And that's the thing. Albums had to be, the whole thing had to be really good, especially now in today's streaming world where everything is instant. Whereas I feel like back in the CD day, you had to wait for an album to come out. You had to wait to physically get it home to listen to it or in your car or anything.
I will say this, though. Albums still drop on streaming platforms. It's just a different experience purchasing it and holding it, because... Back to Justin Timberlake.
Oh, brother.
He just had an album come out recently, and they would preview songs, but you'd have to wait for the whole thing to drop, and then you'd basically stream it. You said you do YouTube music?
Yeah, I do my YouTube music.
And I do Apple streaming.
How are you two married?
And I've been streaming for probably years now. And I've been telling Paul... why aren't you streaming your music? Yeah. And he was very against, wanting to, he still, wants to go to
collect. I wanted to collect the CD.
The stores, buy the CD. We were going to try to find my collection. I had a visor that I would put in my car to listen to CDs. And actually,
you'd only have a dozen to pick from.
No, well, and then it's you'd be driving, you're I don't want this CD anymore. And you got to change CDs. And the first car that I had didn't even have a CD player. So I had a Discman with the cassette that would go into the stereo system.
You plug it into the cassette.
It was also an anti-skip, because anti-skip was a big feature for CDs.
Yeah. And see, the funny thing is, I actually never owned a CD Walkman or whatever.
Crazy.
I actually went from a cassette right to an iPod, because I had a cassette Walkman, especially when I used to go to the gym. I used to have it in the gym, and I had it up until I think, 2000. 2005 is when I changed from. I was using cassettes up until 2005, and this, you know, the yellow Sony disc Walkman.
Walkmans, yeah.
I had that, and I remember one day I was at the gym, and it was done. It was toast. It died, and I remember throwing it in the trash and going home. And then my roommate had I was looking at getting a CD, man, and he was like, "CDs are so yesterday.
Yeah.
You got to get an iPod." And I was like, "Oh boy, that was a whole new world for me."
And you know, before the iPod, I don't know. Mini discs. Do you remember there was going to be an introduction of a little tiny disc called the mini disc? It was in the late 90s. Yes, we've got a cat crawling on a whole bunch of stuff over here.
Yeah, which you're probably seeing this camera.
Oh yeah,
over here.
you can see. Yes.
Is that Luna? Yeah, it's Luna.
It's Luna. Wow. So yeah, mini discs were something that was going to start in, like, that's another thing that I remember. I used to go to the Sony store, and I would love to look at the different technology that was coming out, like, screw the little boom boxes, get a 6 CD changer and dual cassette. And like those were the things that were advancing in technology, I guess, at that time. And the mini discs never did take off.
No, they never did. But that was, then we had
and then streaming.
Streaming came along and that changed everything.
Oh, we got to talk about Napster. We got to talk about LimeWire. Yes. So that was the early 2000s, I believe. And I still remember, going and buying blank CDs and trying to find the songs that I wanted, but making sure they were good quality songs, because sometimes you'd find like a dud, I guess you could say, that sounded really bad. But of course, you had to be careful because you didn't want to screw your computer up with viruses. You had to have really good virus protection at that point.
Yeah.
So that was I feel for a couple of years. And then the first generation iPod came out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was in 2005-ish. Have to figure out that. And it was that little white shuffle.
I had one. That's the one I had got.
And that's before iPhones actually came out, because I still had a flip phone at that time. And that was where you would basically stick. It was USB, I think. But you'd still have to download your music, right? You'd still download your music, stick it on there. And then I don't even know when streaming really started. I started actually paying for songs through iTunes in the 2010s.
Yeah, it'd be 2010s.
You pay it'd be a good deal if you got a 99-cent song. And then you owned it.
Yeah, I remember starting to buy, especially local artists when they would release music, and I would get the CD. I'd order the CD, but at the same time they would give you their music, the streaming music, at the same time as an MP3 folder or whatnot. You get an email with that, and then you'd get the CD in the mail a week later. So I was like, oh, cool. Now I could put it. And that's when I started putting music on my cell phone. I would put the music, and then at that time, I would plug it into my vehicle when I was driving around. So it was almost pointless by then to get a CD, because I already had the MP3 starting to come.
Yeah.
Put them in my phone, and then driving around, just plug it into your vehicle. And the craziest thing now is that my new vehicle, well, it's not even new. It's going to be, 4 years old this summer.
He says my new vehicle, but I'm making half of the car payments, everybody. Did we all capture that?
She never drives it, though. She drove it last night for maybe the 4th time since we bought it, right? My Toyota Tacoma. But it doesn't have a CD player. And when we bought the vehicle, it was the first vehicle we'd ever had that had no CD player. And it was just strange to me not having because I would go for road trips, right? And I would always bring, a half dozen to a dozen CDs with me. And we had the folder. I still had a folder, put the CDs. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll probably be in the mood for this. Maybe that'll bring it just in case. Oh, I got to bring, some ZZ Top, something not so metal. And I would bring it on the road trips. But now it's I don't even have that choice. It's whatever is on my cell phone or is on my
Well, there's streaming,
YouTube.
But then there's also satellite radio, which reminds me, for all of you Canadians, roll up the rim. I won a 6-month subscription to XM radio. And so I basically can put the app on my cell phone and then stream music for 6 months. So there's so many platforms, I guess you could say.
There is now.
Of music where they didn't have that when we were growing up.
No.
The modes changed, right? They changed from records. And records are actually kind of popular. There's a resurgence back for them because people want that tangible experience.
And it's more the collecting of
the collecting part.
But there's also a different sound. they say with MP3, there's like a sterile sound to the music where when you listen to records, even cassettes, I find more than CDs, there's more of a warmth to the sound, right? So I think that's the nostalgic part of what people always want to have, to feel the music maybe a little bit more that way.
Yeah.
Through a big stereo system in your house or whatnot, play it on a record player. But it's different now. It's especially, I feel bad for the younger generations now that have grown up without experiencing CDs or going to the store to physically buy something.
They won't have that experience.
Do they appreciate it as much? Right?
I mean, I think it all depends on their, what exposure they have at home. Because if they had parents like us that talk about music and talk about the experiences, maybe we would show them other things. But I don't know if they'll get that experience, and it's just
we did, yeah.
No,
it's
they
different.
won't.
It's a different world.
It's
now.
the same as movie streaming. I mean, you could substitute music for movies. They're not going to get the experience of going to a Blockbuster.
Renting DVDs is more ancient than Madonna's boobs.
Having to wait for a movie to come in because nobody has it.
Oh, wow.
Or those back door areas that had the beads.
Oh, that's a whole other video we can make about that. But anyway, so yeah, the music, I just feel it's different. It's a different world than what we grew up with. And I hope that the younger generations appreciate musicians as much as I feel they should.
Yeah.
And
the art, the craft, the
craft
dedication that goes into
because
it.
with me and my studio here, I put a lot of time into recording stuff. Even if it doesn't get to a major label, it gets out into the music streaming world. It's for me more than anything, but I hope that the younger generation, music stays alive, if that's the thing, right?
Well, and what will be interesting is in the next 30, 40 years, what will music look like?
Oh, wow. I can't
Right?
imagine.
We don't know. I would have never imagined 30, 40 years ago that we would be streaming things and paying for our purchases on tapping our phones, right?
Exactly.
So
Different.
it will be will we have implants in our ears?
Hell no.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. But I guess that might be the world we're going to. I don't know.
I don't know. What do you think?
What do you make comments if you want down below? Love to hear what people's comments on, and then maybe in the future we'll bring Christina back and we'll do another video and we'll kind of comment on people's comments.
Yeah, comment about what your first experiences were. What do you remember? What do you miss? What are you nostalgic for? We would love to hear that.
Exactly.
Or Paul would like to hear that. I'm taking over this podcast.
Yeah. Hey, we come as a pair, right? Usually. So, but anyway,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So that's it for today. So until next time, this has been Rage's Ramblings. Shred on.
Peace out.